You know, when you think about Pennsylvania, man, we think about, the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, cheesesteaks, the Steelers, you name it, a lot of great stuff. But Pennsylvania is also a railroad state, and there is so much good current railroading and so much historic railroading. Okay, show of hands, who's been to Horseshoe Curve before? You gotta go there. But today, we're going a little bit further east. We're gonna go to a gem of a little railroad that is so well preserved that you just gotta go see it. This is Trains Live. You know, the Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania and railroads, they kind of mesh, and they're legendary and great spots. But today we're kind of going to zoom in on one little location to the east of Altoona, between a few mountain ridges, probably one of the best preserved historic railroads in the United States. We're going to pay a visit to the East Broad Top, but I'll tell you what, to guide us along the way, we have Kevin Gilliam from Kalmbach Video Services, and Kevin's along today because he is wrapping up a new video production on the East Broad Top. And let's tell you what, folks, I've gotten a sneak peek of this video. If you haven't been to East Broad Top yet, you got to get the video and you got to watch this. If you've already been there, get the video and watch it anyway, because it's going to bring up some memories for you. And if you're planning to go, hey, get the video anyway, because it's going to be your guide to being there. So I guess my point is, we got to talk to Kevin, and you got to get the video on East Broad Top. Kevin, welcome back to Trains Live. How you doing today?
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Hey, doing well. You've got to be the busy video producer, because we talked to you not too long ago about the geared locomotive piece that you were working on, and a little bit before that, a piece on articulated locomotives. And I know, kind of, looking forward, you've got a video on Amtrak you're working on, which we'll talk about later. But today, East Broad Top. You've been there, you've done filming. There's some really cool stuff in this little railroad. So I guess the first thing, for those maybe, say, way out on the West Coast that aren't familiar with, railroading in the Alleghenies, talk to us about the East Broad Top. Kind of what is it, and why is it such a big deal?
So, East Broad Top. You think of railroading, you think of narrow gauge railroading. The main thing that I think most people are going to come up with is the big Rio Grande stuff out in Colorado and New Mexico, Durango and Silverton, Cumbres and Toltec. East Coast narrow gauge railroading was a pretty big deal also, but most of it didn't survive that long. You had the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, which was called the Tweetsee. That was gone by about 1950. The 2-foot gauge in Maine didn't even last that long. They were gone by about the end of the 30s. What was left? Little thing in Pennsylvania called the East Broad Top. Now, Bob, how familiar are you with this?
I will admit, it's still on the list. I've still got to go see it. Do I know the area? Yeah, I lived down in Maryland for a number of years, so I'm familiar with the area. And since we've been working on it here at Trains, yeah, I've done some reading. But there's some details that I probably need to have filled in for me yet.
So you need to grab the video also.
Yes, I do.
So, quick history primer just for anyone that's not up to date. You have Pennsylvania. What was big in the 1800s? Iron, steel manufacturing.
Sure, yeah.
You had Rockhill, the Rockhill Orbisonia area, which is east of Altoona, south of Mount Union. You had this big iron furnace that set up there. You heard of Rockhill Furnace? Well, there's where the furnace came from. Now, what do you use for it? You need coal. Broad top coal fields were pretty popular. Good coal, good metallurgical coal. So what they did, drag a railroad down from the Pennsylvania and Mount Union into the broad top coal fields, get the coal, bring it to the iron furnaces. You can use it for the furnaces, you can use it for the railroad, ship the rest of it out, and make money. That was kind of the theory of the East Broad Top to begin with.
So they basically had a very nice little self-contained unit servicing themselves, making money for themselves, basically taking raw materials to a processing point, processing them out, and then, of course, with the connection, as you mentioned, with the Pennsylvania Railroad, they've got access to the outside world. Do I get that kind of right?
That's it. And here's the thing, and I don't think people understand this. Now, the East Broad Top's narrow gauge. That's 3 feet. That's a little bit narrower than your standard railroad, which is 4 foot, 8.5. That's what you'll see. You go out to your regular railroad. This is narrow gauge. Now, the thing is, most of these narrow gauges had a big problem because if you try and move stuff from standard gauge to narrow gauge, you've got a problem because you got to change out the trucks, you got to move them across cars, you got to do something. Thing is, with coal, it has to be cleaned when it comes out of the ground. You've got all these impurities in coal. So what you had to do is take it to a cleaning plant, which just happened to be in Mount Union. Take the narrow gauge to the coal fields, take it up to Mount Union, dump it in the cleaning plant out of narrow gauge hoppers. When you reload it into standard gauge hoppers. You never had to break that bulk shipment.
Okay,
and
so
that was the big thing that let them survive.
They didn't have the transload problem. They saved a ton of money doing this, and essentially at the end of their line, there was a ready outlet that also covered one of the processes in the shipment. These guys sound like for their time, they had it together. They knew what they were doing. All right. And they also built narrow gauge, so they saved money on equipment, on track. They very much sound like they were a self-supporting operation.
Yeah, they were totally self-supporting. You got to remember, at the time that they started construction on East Broad Top, there was no concept of standard gauge. There was all of these things, and it was only after that the railroad was built that standard gauge happened, and all these different gauges of railroads combined into standard gauge all at one time. So they kind of went from being a leader and say, hey, we'll save money by using the smaller gauge, to, oh, shoot, we have a problem.
Okay. And I also have the reading that I have done on East Broad Top, besides taking the coal right to that cleaning plant, I also understand they had a few other innovative ideas as far as using standard gauge cars on the narrow gauge railroad. But how the heck are we going to do that with 4 foot 8.5 inch span between the wheels and 3 foot 6 on East Broad Top?
Well, you ever looked at a model railroad and you had to move a car from one track to the next? You just pick it up and move it over? That's basically what they did. They had this thing where they could lift up the end of a car on a dual gauge track, so you had both standard and narrow gauge on the same track, lift the car up, run one set of wheels out, run the other set down, put it back down. They got it down to about 30 minutes that they could change out the wheel sets of the cars. The clearances on the EBT could handle standard gauge cars. So all they did was they just changed out the trucks and sent the cars down the narrow gauge. 30 minutes in, 30 minutes out. They didn't charge the railroad for interchange fees for that time. They just did it. Sure. It made it easy.
Because they were saving time and tons of money by doing that. Is just, when you look at it, the old saying about what necessity is the mother of invention. This is pure innovation, pure invention. What a clever thing to actually do. Kevin, if I understand right, also what makes this railroad so interesting, it operated. It shut down, it operated again, shut down again, and through this, this whole time span, there has been question as to whether it would actually survive and to what degree it would survive and what level of preservation. And if I'm understanding right, it's really kind of a gem.
Yeah, it really is. What you got is you had a totally self-contained empire there, with everything pretty much based in the Orbisonia shops. They could basically make absolutely anything that they needed to there. Now, when they shut down in 1956. They also hauled some brick. There was a lot of brick that they hauled in Mount Union in addition to the coal stuff. But they shut down in 1956, and the Kovalchick Salvage Company, which is a scrapper, they bought the railroad. And they did nothing. They just let it sit there. They said,
Okay.
apparently this meant something to them. They looked at it and they just sent everyone home, and it closed one day and it didn't reopen the next day. And I mean, even if you go in the shops these days, you're going to see tools that were basically exactly where they were laid down in 1956 when the last workers walked out of there. So,
Okay.
but they had it shut down for a couple of years. The borough of Orbisonia was coming up with a celebration. They said, "Hey, can you bring a train out for display?" And the Kovalchick said, "You know what? We'll run one for you." They did that. They were kind of surprised. This is the very dawn of the tourist era. People came out. It's like, okay, fine. Well, what we'll do is we'll fix up about 3 miles of track. Now, you got to remember, there was like 35 miles of main line. So you're talking just a minuscule part of track. They fixed up a little bit of tracks, ran it, made money. So, okay, fine, we'll do more. We'll bring out another engine. Eventually, they had 4 steam engines operating out of the 6 that were on the property when the railroad shut down. Fast forward, eventually, hard times do happen, money, the stuff. You're in the middle of Pennsylvania. Literally, if you've ever been there, the middle of nowhere, if you want to find a fast food restaurant or a hotel, you're going to have to drive a place. It's isolated. Yep. That's part of the reason it survived. So eventually, 2011, they shut down. You have the volunteer group, the Friends of the East Broad Top, doing their best to preserve everything, but it was pretty much dormant. They tried several things. The National Park Service had gotten involved at one point, thinking about whether they wanted to do anything with it. Should it be preserved here? What's the best option? Do we split everything up? No, we really don't want to do that, but how can you make it viable? So 2020, new group comes in, East Broad Top Foundation. They purchased the railroad. They purchased the shops. They purchased the equipment. They've got about 80% of the main line that they own. A little portion had been sold off a couple of years ago. And then they said, okay, let's invest money. Let's bring this back. This is something that we need to preserve. Railroad archaeological preserves, there aren't very many of them in the United States. So we got to think about this. This is worth saving.
On level of preservation, where do you put this? Because everything that you're describing here so far leads me to believe that we've just kind of cracked open a time capsule here.
I tell people this is the railroad version of Jurassic Park, and that's literally what it is. I mean, take the places that are totally intact from what they used to be. As far as I can tell, you've pretty much got 2. You've got the East Broad Top, and you've got the Nevada Northern. Now, I'd probably add Chama, New Mexico on the Rio Grande as a next level down. Alamosa was the big thing, but Chama was kind of a division point.
Okay.
It hadn't changed very much. Durango's sort of there, but Durango itself has changed quite a bit. And with the expansion of town, there's a lot less yard than there used to be. There's a lot of modification that's been done there. But I mean, you take the places that are intact, that haven't changed, the original stuff still there, all the cars, all the locomotives. How many places are really left? My theory is there's 2, East Broad Top and Nevada Northern. What do you think?
I from what I know, I'm going to tend to agree with you, because I think it very much sounds like, having talked with and seen materials from both East Broad Top and Nevada Northern, you're walking into a situation where this is the equipment that was used. This is some of the methodology that was used. The history is very much intact. The records are there. There was one thing that I had seen earlier in a special interest publication on East Broad Top that we had done for Trains Magazine that talked about the archives there at East Broad Top. And how the records, everything was there. So, to me, this very much sounds like you said, hey, there's tools that probably are in the same place as they were when the railroad shut down in 56. So, this is like the historic time capsule we've cracked open here. Now, you have been to the railroad for filming of the video production. Your impressions. What were some of the things that you saw that made you go, wow, or just, oh, aha, I get that?
Well, the first time I was there was 1993, which seems like eons ago now, but it was the normal thing where it was the family vacation, and we went up there, and you show up and you ride your little hour-long steam train, and you go up here, ride the train up, ride the train back. Okay, that's cute. Let's go somewhere else. Came back a couple of years later, did some photo specials and stuff. One of those photo specials that we went on, it was raining, just absolutely buckets of rain. And they said, hey, you guys really aren't getting anything out of this. You guys look like you're approaching the drowned rats. They said, we're going to go back into town. We're going to let them open the shops, let you guys just walk around back in there, because, let's let this rain, let a little bit of this rain. It sounds like we've got a little bit of a break coming later on, or at least it's going to calm down a little bit. Why don't you go in here and dry off and enjoy? And they said, okay, fine. So, you've got these buildings, they're wooden buildings, they're sinking into the ground, they're leaning somewhat sideways, kind of the leaning towers of Orbisonia there. But you walk into the door, and you see this you see these vertical boilers, you see this belt-driven complex that looks like, I guess you call it steampunk now, but I mean, it was absolutely a time capsule. And you walk in here and you go, oh my gosh, you have no idea what's behind those doors until you walk through.
This is turn of the century industrial America, when steam power is, wow, the new thing that is making labor so much easier, if you will, for the time. It's the old heart and soul of railroading almost.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there is very few places where you can literally just walk through and go back in time, and that's one of them. There's even fewer of these places, in railroading, because all the places, they're active shops. Things have changed. Things have been modified, or you're working with a 1930s roundhouse or whatever. These shops date to like the mid to late 1800s, and it's all still there. It's just got a coating of dust on it, and that's it. And these days the coating of dust somewhat is gone, because they're starting to emphasize that, because what they learned when they reopened the railroad is you can't ask somebody to drive all the way out here just for a 40-minute train ride and go home and expect them to come back. You got to do something. You got to do something to bring them back. Now, they're lucky. You've got the Rockhill Trolley Museum next door, which operates on an old EBT branch line. So now you've got two events that you can do. But hey, maybe we can show them what actually made the railroad tick. Take them through the tours, show them behind the scenes as to what this was. Now you got three things. Now you're approaching a half day to a full day. Now it makes it worthwhile for someone to come out there.
Sure. And Kevin, you've taken me right to where question I wanted to ask you, and okay, you and I like trains. We work doing things with trains, all right?
Would have never guessed.
Yeah, a show called Trains Live, But, you visit the railroad, and you just mentioned the whole idea of people coming to ride this railroad. And, you think about, okay, tourists, mom, dad, the kids, older folks. And yeah, you're driving, as you describe, out into the Alleghenies in Pennsylvania, away from a lot of the big city conveniences, the big city attractions, things of that nature. What do you think, having seen this, the railroad, what do you think the average person is going to appreciate or like, or, beyond just, hey, taking a really cool train ride, why should they visit someplace like this?
Well, this is one of those things that's kind of like, and we don't emphasize history as much in this country as we probably should. There's places out there. There's Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. There's Greenfield Village up near Detroit. There's a couple of these other places out there. Visit the Liberty Bell, see some of this stuff, go see, Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, some of the founding fathers, that type of thing. But railroading, where is the history? Where is everything that started? These historical preserves, most of the time you're going to look at this stuff and you say, okay, cool, it's a train. Maybe it's a steam train, but everything around it, you're constantly reminded of the current day. You're constantly reminded of 2023. You go to Durango, you board a train, but the McDonald's is next door. You can see it from the boarding platform. Same type of thing. You go to Orbisonia. I know, they have good apple pies. But
you're talking to the guy who last time at Durango grabbed his McMuffin and coffee and hopped on the train. So, yeah.
Hey, we love our Starbucks. We love our modern conveniences. But you get to Orbisonia, and as soon as you come over, get over there, I mean, if you ignore the cars in the parking lot, with the other tourists that are doing the same thing you are, you've gone back in time. And there's very few places in this country, especially railroad places, that are really that time capsule. And that's what makes it special.
So when somebody goes now to East Broad Top, first they got to get the video and they got to watch that. In your opinion, take the train ride, visit the shops, go through the station. What else is kind of a not miss there at East Broad Top?
Well, like I said, I think the other big thing is the Rockhill Trolley Museum. That's part of it. They've got a huge collection. They've got a whole bunch of operable trolleys. They have a whole bunch of one-of-a-kind pieces. It's amazing the stuff that they've done. The other thing is you can go, and the tracks are still there. They're grown up by weeds. They're starting to move the railroad south, because if you've seen any of the tourist stuff, it runs through these nice little farmlands and fields, and it's, kind of cute, bucolic pasture scene of railroading.
Sure.
You go south of Orbisonia, everything changes. You're going toward the coal fields. Would you believe tall bridges, tunnels, mountains, steep grades? This is the East Broad Top that people have forgot that ever exists. And if you go all the way up to Robertsdale, which was the edge of the coal fields, that was pretty much the end of the line there. The Friends of the East Broad Top, they've got a museum up there that you can have speeder car rides where you can push a hand car up the hill into the coal fields. They've got about 3/4 of a mile of track where you can go up and do this. The whole railroad, all that main line is still there. It just has trees growing up through it. The roads have been paved over, so you kind of have to know what you're looking for. Sure. Give it time. They want to go south. They're starting to go south. They're starting to clear. Forever, East Broad Top, I think everyone looks at it as this kind of like little bitty kind of like Disney ride or whatever. It's cute, but there's so much more there that people don't realize. And it's coming back. It's slow, but it is coming back. There's money being poured in. There's a huge volunteer base that's being poured in. It's coming back to life. And this is something that a lot of people thought they'd never see.
Beautiful. All right. We're talking with Kevin Gilliam, one of Kalmbach's video producers. His latest work is a video production on the East Broad Top out in Pennsylvania. Kevin, how soon? When are we gonna? When can I get my copy here?
You want to count in days? Last I heard is hopefully by the end of July, copies should
Oh,
start
okay.
shipping.
Fantastic. You're going to get those on KalmbachHobbyStore.com. KalmbachHobbyStore.com. And I'll tell you what, let's take this opportunity. We're going to jump over to Mr. Bob's Railroad Bookshelf. We're going to stay in the hobby store for just a moment. Before you go, besides taking a look at the video, which is now going to become required viewing, pick yourself up a copy of the Tourist Trains Guidebook. There is over 500 tourist railroads, railroad museums, historic railroad sites throughout the U.S. and Canada that are listed in this book. Yes, you can find out about East Broad Top in the Tourist Trains Guidebook. Pick it up at KalmbachHobbyStore.com. Now, number of other books on the bookshelf here today, some good ones. We're gonna start off with a nice little one here. The East Broad Top Railroad. Some of you may recognize this cover. It is a series of basically history picture books, and if you're looking for kind of history, a little bit of text, a few maps, lots and lots of good photos, this is the one you're going to want to take a look for. Very simply, Images of Rail, East Broad Top Railroad. Check this one out. This one's a fairly current publication, so probably some of the better booksellers, your library, but easy read, a lot of really cool pictures. Now, if you want to take a deep dive into some place like East Broad Top, as Kevin had mentioned, at one point the National Park Service was actually looking at this little railroad and analyzing to see, is there anything the Park Service could do with it? What were recommendations as to how to preserve it, how to open it up again? And in 1990, there was a study that was released on the East Broad Top Railroad as part of America's Industrial Heritage Project in southwestern Pennsylvania. Now, this is one of those where, okay, it's not going to be that page-turning read, but if you want to take a deep dive into the history and look behind the scenes, you want to go to the library or to a government document depository and look for this, because in this book there is again, lots of very good pictures, part of the shops that Kevin was talking about, but also you're going to find analysis. What does the site look like? What are what are the resources that need to be available for visitors? How could visitors use this? Also, maps. Oh yeah. Fold-out maps describing a lot of the material that is in this particular publication. So if you want to take that deep dive, study of alternatives, what things could have been done or could be done with East Broad Top as far as preserving it. It was a study done back in 1990 by the National Park Service. And as Kevin mentioned to me before we started here today, right here, folks, this is the East Broad Top book that you need to find. East Broad Top by Lee Rainey and Frank Kuiper, the definitive book on East Broad Top. And you look at just the cover and boy, you get a great picture. But Rainey and Kuiper go through the East Broad Top literally from the beginning, talking about the history, plenty of photos. There's that coal cleaning plant that we had talked about earlier, but this is the book. This is the book. I know Kevin has one. I think he actually sleeps with it under his pillow while he was working on the video here.
Don't tell them that.
Don't. Oh, I'm not. I wasn't. Sorry, folks, didn't hear that from me. Rainey and Kuiper's East Broad Top. Going to be a library look or hit your favorite railroad museum. I'll bet you if you go out to these Broad Top, they probably got one in their archives. Yeah, so plenty of good information on this neat little railroad. Hey, Kevin, as always, good speaking with you. Can't wait to get my copy since this is going to be required viewing here now. Get it at kalmbachhobbystore.com. kalmbachhobbystore.com. That's where we're gonna find this one. Fun project for you, yes?
It's been a fun project. I tell you, the one thing that I think struck me was going up there for the Friends of the East Broad Top work weekend, because these guys, they work their hearts out to preserve this stuff. And especially if you count the time during the shutdown years where the railroad wasn't doing anything, I think about half of those buildings might have collapsed during that time frame. They kept everything standing, and you cannot overstate their efforts enough. Be around them for a short amount of time, you'll get the passion. You know, as one person said, you know, even if the trains never run, what's in those shop buildings are worth saving. Fantastic.
Listen, get the video when it comes out here toward the end of the month. East Broad Top video produced by Kalmbach Videos, kalmbachhobbystore.com. Kevin, we will talk to you again. I imagine Amtrak video is probably going to be the next thing we'll talking about. Glad to have you along today. Listen, folks, trains.com. I want to see you surfing the train web here with us. New content going up literally just about every day on all aspects of trains and railroading. Trains.com. And of course, listen, I really want to see you in the pages of Trains magazine real soon.
The East Broad Top Railroad has returned to the land of the living. The line, best known as a little narrow-gauge steam railroad in the mountains of Pennsylvania, has been acquired by the East Broad Top Foundation. Now, the hard work begins, returning the railroad to operation after a 10-year hiatus. But the East Broad Top is more than just a small tourist railroad. There's a self-sufficient railroad here with a full steam shop, 6 steam engines on the property, and more than 20 miles of main line, most of which hasn't seen a train since the 1950s. The goal? Reopening the entire railroad once again. Come with us to see the East Broad Top that you know and the part that you don't. From the grand reopening in 2020, follow the progress on the East Broad Top Reborn. A new DVD presented by Trains Magazine. Order your copy today at the Kalmbach Hobby Store.